Adam Rourke stood absolutely still in the middle of the stairwell, one hand frozen on the railing, his lips parted as if about to speak, but nothing came out. You saw him. Right there, just past the third step where the morning light from the stained glass window fell in fractured reds and blues. And then, he wasn't. Gone. No sound, no movement, no warning, just absence. It's been 3 days since anyone's seen Adam, and no one is asking the right question. The security, cameras, they still show him walking up, and then there's this. Something no one wants to admit. Every person who reviewed the footage afterward, every single one, suffered blackouts, seizures, spontaneous nosebleeds. One technician, a former Army comms analyst, started whispering Latin phrases in reverse. She doesn't speak Latin. She never did. And then there's you. Somehow you're still watching, still aware. Do you feel that tightening in your chest, that pressure in your skull, like a memory trying to claw its way out, except it's not yours? Yeah, that's how it begins. This isn't just a missing person case, this is a pattern. A hidden frequency embedded in reality itself, one we weren't supposed to hear. And it's always the same. A person vanishes after whispering something no one else heard. In Adam's case, it was during a birthday party for his niece. He bent down, kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's not working on me." Only his niece heard him. She told her mom. She didn't even flinch. But later that night, the 4-year-old girl woke up screaming a name no one in the family recognized. Krylon. Not a person, not a place. A sound that left frost on the baby monitor's screen. Adam's apartment has been sealed by Homeland Security. His computer? Fried from the inside out. No one can explain it, and no one is allowed to try. His phone kept ringing for 48 hours after he vanished. The voice on the other end always started the same way. Do not trust the quiet ones. They're listening from the inside. You're probably wondering why this hasn't gone public. Why the media hasn't run a single word. Here's the thing, they can't. Something's scrambling the signals. We tried to upload the first report last night, and the file corrupted mid-sentence. The editor had a breakdown, sat in the corner for 2 hours repeating the phrase, "They blink backward." Look, this isn't about ghosts or conspiracies. It's about biology. We've confirmed it. Every known intelligent species in the Zeta field, from the aquatic Gerin of Neptune's orbit to the hive-souled Kratosh of Vega 9, all exhibit absolute susceptibility to high-frequency neural reprogramming, what we would call mind control. Hypnotic override, thought tethering. Call it what you want, it works on everything except us humans. The only race ever recorded that resists full-spectrum alien compulsion, and they are terrified of that. We don't know why. We don't know, but it's in our blood, something ancient, buried deep behind the language centers and the fear pathways, some cold evolutionary detour that makes our minds invisible to them. But here's the truth, no one can stomach. Resistance has a cost. That cost is reality itself, folding at the seams. This morning, Adam's niece, little Emily, spoke her first full sentence since his disappearance. She looked straight into the living room camera, eyes locked dead into the lens, and said in a voice far too old for her tiny frame, "He's awake inside the static." The signal dropped, the house lost power, her mother's still missing, and that name, the one she screamed in the dark, it just showed up again, etched into the metal of an orbital satellite. Letters burned inward, not carved. Krylon. What if the only reason we can resist is because we're not from here either? Tell me, do you remember ever choosing to wake up? The word Krylon still burned in your mind, echoing like an old scream trapped beneath ice. But then, just as suddenly as the name shattered the silence, the world you thought you were witnessing began to fray, like an old film reel unraveling in real time. The sharp clarity of Adam's niece, Emily, speaking with a voice that felt impossibly ancient and alien, dissolved into static, and the edges of your vision wavered. Was that real? Or some trick your brain was playing? Maybe it wasn't Emily, at all. Maybe it was just your mind cracking under the weight of the unknown. You blink, and for a split second the room rearranges itself. The furniture shifts, just a hair, like a mirage or a glitch in the matrix. The audio in your headphones warps, a low-frequency hum slicing through the silence, like something breathing right behind your thoughts. Then it cuts out, leaving a hollow ring in your ears that feels like it's drilling inside your skull. The signal drops again, and when it flickers back, the grainy security footage is different. Adam's face is gone. No disappearance, no whisper, just an empty stairwell. You rewind, play it again. The evidence disappears before your eyes. The files you downloaded, corrupted. The secret recording you swore you heard. Gone. Then comes the whisper. Soft, indistinct. A voice that teases the edges of comprehension but never quite forms words. You're sure you caught it on the recording? Was it a threat, a warning, or just the tinnitus ringing in your ears from staring at a screen for too long? And just like that, your memory falters. You can't quite place the last 3 hours. There's a gap, blank and cold, as if your mind has deliberately erased something important. What did you do? Who did you talk to? You don't remember, but the weight of that missing time presses down like a stone on your chest. That's when she arrives. Her name is Marissa Hale. You don't know where she came from exactly. She says she's a friend of Adam's, but the way she moves through the shadows of the story feels off, like a shadow stretched too thin, flickering and uncertain. Her eyes hold a desperate intensity, but her voice trembles with a fragile edge as if she's holding herself together by sheer force of will. I've been watching, she says quietly, voice low and rushed. There's something wrong with what you're seeing, with what you think you know. She pulls you back into her world, a world where nothing is as it seems. Marissa talks in fragments, barely complete thoughts that float in the air like half-remembered dreams. The files you found, they're planted. It's a game, a psychological experiment. You think you're uncovering some cosmic truth, but it's just layers of manipulation. You don't know what's real anymore. Her words prick at something deep inside you, a kernel of doubt you didn't want to admit. Was this all just a setup? A real unsolved mystery twisted into a lie to trap your mind? Or worse, a truth so dangerous it hides in the gaps between what they tell you and what they don't want you to remember. Marissa's presence is both a comfort and a warning. She's the only person who seems to understand the creeping paranoia, but you can't help feeling that she's also part of the same puzzle, a piece you can't quite fit. Her eyes dart constantly, tracking invisible threats. She confesses to nightmares of voices whispering Krylon at her, fracturing her sleep. She shows you recordings, old, grainy tapes of voices speaking in languages no one alive should understand. But the tapes distort and rewind themselves whenever you try to listen closely, slipping through your fingers like smoke. You start noticing glitches all around you. Conversations drop out mid-sentence. Text messages from friends arrive scrambled. Your own reflection seems to lag behind your movements. Sometimes you swear you hear static beneath the hum of everyday life, like some hidden transmission buried in the background noise of existence. Your grip on what's real becomes unsteady. Memories collide with dreams. Faces shift in photographs. Moments of clarity dissolve into deep, unfathomable dread. You're haunted by the feeling that you're not just an observer, but a participant in something vast and unknowable. The trauma of what you thought you saw and what you're afraid you might have imagined sits heavy in your chest. There's a raw, unspoken ache beneath the surface, the kind that doesn't need explanation. It's the shadow left behind when the mind fractures, the silence screaming louder than any voice. Marissa pulls you aside one night, her breath shallow, eyes wild with a secret she can barely hold. They're inside us, she whispers. Not like invaders, more like echoes. The mind control, it's not an alien thing, it's something else. Something buried deep in our DNA, in the places we don't understand or want to face. You want to argue, to push her away, but the truth, the twisted, gnawing truth, settles like a poison in your veins. What if this is the real unsolved mystery? Not who vanished or who whispered the name Krylon, but the truth behind what no one tells you that the battle isn't out there in the stars. It's right here, in the war for the very essence of your mind. And as the line between mental breakdown and supernatural interference blurs beyond recognition, you realize the most terrifying question isn't whether Adam disappeared, but whether you ever existed at all in the world you remember. Because if you don't trust Marissa, if you don't trust yourself, then who can you trust? The screen glitches once more, and the last thing you see before the feed cuts is not Adam's face. It's yours whispering the name. Krylon. The flickering glow of the monitor cast long shadows against the peeling walls of your cramped apartment, as if the very room itself was leaning in, hungry for the truth you thought you'd finally uncovered. For the first time in days, the gnawing anxiety that had settled like a stone in your gut softened to a dull ache, replaced by a fragile hope. Maybe this was it. The breakthrough. The hidden truth buried beneath layers of paranoia and fractured memories. Maybe you were finally going to see the end of this nightmare. It started with a folder buried deep inside the encrypted archives you'd managed to unlock, a collection of documents, videos, and audio files marked simply Project Lumina. At first glance, it seemed like the bureaucratic detritus of some classified government operation, but the deeper you dug, the more unsettling the picture became. Reports of individuals experiencing memory glitches, sudden personality shifts, unexplainable blackouts, phenomena strikingly similar to what you and Marissa had endured. The project was supposedly an early attempt to study cognitive resilience, neural manipulation, and something ominously referred to as the silent frequency. One recording caught your breath cold, a grainy VHS tape labeled only with a date from 20 years ago. The footage showed a young woman, disoriented and trembling, in a sterile interrogation room. She repeated a name over and over. Krylon, her voice cracking between fear and something deeper, like a call being sent out from the edge of her mind. Then the tape cut abruptly. You watched it again, slow, frame by frame, searching for clues, and that's when you saw it, a small scar on her wrist, identical to the one Marissa showed you earlier. "You're not crazy," she whispered, eyes wide in the flickering light. "They lied to you. This is real. It's been going on for decades." You wanted to believe her. You wanted to believe the nightmare finally had a name, a face, a history you could trace and maybe stop. You thought that if this was a pattern, a hidden history carefully erased from public memory, then you could fight it, expose it, understand it, survive it. But just as the relief started to settle in, like a thin veneer of calm over turbulent waters, the line between past and present blurred, and the first cracks appeared. You began to notice something uncanny about the old footage. The walls of that interrogation room, the same peeling paint, the same pattern of scuffs on the floor, the same flickering overhead light, matched the apartment you'd fled from days ago. Your apartment. Your reality. Then came the voices. At first, faint whispers drifting from your phone late at night. Indecipherable but laced with a dread familiarity. The whispers grew louder, twisting into phrases you couldn't place but somehow understood, like half-remembered prayers or warnings buried deep in childhood memories. One night, Marissa found a box of old family recordings hidden beneath the floorboards of her childhood home, a place she hadn't visited in years. On a dusty tape labeled only with the date of her 5th birthday, her mother's voice came through, distorted but unmistakably real. "Remember, Emily. Remember Krylon." Emily. Her name was Emily, too. You felt your stomach turn. This wasn't just a random coincidence or an eerie quirk of fate. It was something else, something sinister and intimate, woven into the fabric of your very lives, whispering in the cracks of your minds. Your grip on reality trembled as you pieced together more fragments, more half-buried memories, the faces of strangers who looked eerily like family members, rooms you thought you'd never seen, and moments of terror flashing like lightning behind your eyelids. Memories not your own, or memories suppressed, erased. And then, the uneasiest discovery of all. A journal entry you hadn't written, dated 3 weeks ago, tucked away inside your locked drawer. The handwriting was yours but shaky, filled with ramblings about being watched, about them, listening from the shadows, about a presence that could see through walls and minds. You tore through your own belongings, searching for more evidence that this wasn't just a mental collapse, not just paranoia running wild. The air around you thickened, heavy and suffocating, as if the very atmosphere pulsed with an unseen heartbeat. The danger you felt wasn't some external enemy with a name or a face. It was something far more terrifying. A presence that had been watching since the beginning, waiting patiently in the spaces between your thoughts, feeding on your fear and confusion. It's a silence louder than any scream, a weight deeper than any wound. You realize now that the truth you chased was a carefully constructed illusion, a false resolution meant to trap you in the labyrinth of your own mind. And just when you think you can't descend any further into the abyss, you find the detail that unravels everything. A small, innocuous photo tucked inside the journal, half burned but still legible. It shows a family portrait, faded and cracked at the edges, with a date handwritten in the corner. March 1999. In the center of the photo stands a boy, your age, with eyes too knowing for a child. And there, barely visible behind him, is a shadowy figure, indistinct but unmistakably watching. You stare, breath caught in your throat, the room closing in tighter. This moment, this picture, turns the entire story upside down. Because you recognize that boy. It's you, and that shadow. It's been here all along. Suddenly, every fragment, every whisper, every vanished moment demands a second look. Every scene, every fact, every pulse of static on your feed forces you to rewind and question everything you thought you knew. You're not just a witness anymore. You're part of the story. The mystery uncovered is not some distant conspiracy, but an intimate puzzle of identity, memory, and control. And the deeper you go, the more you realize the terrifying truth lurking beneath it all. You've been living this before, in a loop of forgotten time. They told you what to remember. They erased what they feared. They hid the real story behind a veil of silence and shadows. And now, the real question is not who vanished or why the name Krylon haunts you. It's how long you've been watching this story unfold, unaware that you were the one being watched, because the moment you think you've solved the mystery is exactly the moment it begins again. And this time, there's no turning back. First time you noticed it wasn't just you was subtle, an almost imperceptible shift in the static that filled the air around your phone, a whisper beneath the hum of city noise, like a voice echoing just beyond the edge of hearing. You thought it was your imagination, or the residue of sleepless nights bleeding into the waking world. But then the messages started, cryptic, coded, slipping into your inbox at hours when no one else should be awake, unsigned, but unmistakably directed. They were fragments, a symbol resembling a fractured eye, a series of numbers with no apparent pattern, and once a video clip, a grainy, shaky recording of a cracked wall with a faint, scrawled message beneath peeling paint. You were right, all along. The words sent a cold jolt through your veins because deep down, you knew the truth had been staring you in the face from the beginning. It wasn't just your mind unraveling, nor an isolated experiment gone wrong. There were others, dozens, maybe hundreds, caught in the same spiral of memory glitches and fading realities. Others who had seen the shadows lurking just beyond perception, who had heard the whispers calling out from some place no one dares name, who had their own pieces of the puzzle but no way to fit them together. Then the dreams began. Not yours, alone, but shared visions, snippets that bled across minds you'd never met but somehow sensed in the deepest corners of your consciousness. Dreams of a sprawling labyrinth, its walls alive with shifting glyphs and flickering lights, where faces blurred and voices repeated a name none of you had dared speak aloud. Krylon. The same name that had haunted Emily, Marissa, and now you. The name that was both key and curse, a cipher entwined with your very being. These weren't mere nightmares. They were transmissions, coded messages from a hidden network of minds, waiting for you to decode their meaning. It's in these fragmented messages and shared dreams that the conspiracy stretches wider than you imagined. The symbols recur everywhere, a series of interlocking triangles, a faint watermark in old news footage, a tattoo seen in the background of a viral video from decades ago that the government never released. These signs seem like breadcrumbs, left by someone or something that's been silently watching, orchestrating from the shadows with an unblinking eye, feeding on fractured identities and fragmented memories. You realize with a chill that this force doesn't just observe. It manipulates, rewrites, and rewires the very fabric of perception, blurring the lines between what is real and what is constructed. Your sense of self fractures further as you're pulled into a new perspective, a third voice that arrives unexpectedly, disjointed and raw but unsettlingly truthful. This observer, calling themselves Harper, claims to have been tracking the pattern for years, piecing together found footage from 20 years ago and archives that should have remained buried. Harper speaks with a heavy weight of knowledge and weary skepticism, warning that this isn't simply about mind control or lost memories, but about a deeper war waged on the psyche itself. They describe how identity has become a battleground, how memories are weapons forged and shattered by an invisible hand that twists what you believe about yourself. Harper's messages arrive as unpolished videos, raw and jittery, fragments that cut between grainy historical footage and intimate moments where they confess their own slipping grip on reality. They've been inside us since before we knew, Harper says, voice trembling, not just watching but shaping. Every thought, every memory, a potential target. You think you remember who you are. Maybe that was their plan all along, to make you doubt, to make you forget. With Harper's insight, the web of mystery tightens, suffocating and relentless. You begin to question everything. The faces, in your photographs, the conversations that suddenly feel rehearsed, the fleeting déjà vu moments that prick at your sanity. The notion of a fixed identity seems less and less real, replaced by the haunting possibility that you are nothing more than a construct, a vessel molded by a force whose motives remain veiled and impenetrable. As the conspiracy deepens, you sense the boundaries between individual and collective blur. The voices in your head multiply, not in madness but as echoes of those other watchers, each fighting their own unseen battle for control and clarity. The city itself seems complicit, its neon lights flickering like distorted signals, and every stranger's glance holds a secret, every familiar place a hidden code. And yet, for all the darkness, there is an electric charge in the air, an urgency that demands you keep watching, keep searching, keep unraveling, because beneath the layers of silence and shadows, beneath the manipulation and memory glitches, there lies something more. A truth buried so deeply that revealing it might change everything you think you know about reality, identity, and freedom. The last message you receive is not a warning or a clue, but a question. How much of you is really yours? And with that, the screen fades to black, leaving you suspended in a quiet storm of dread and revelation, caught between the fragments of a mystery that refuses to be forgotten, refusing to be solved. The story is no longer just about what happened, it's about what's happening now, in this very moment to you, and to all the others who are watching, waiting, and wondering if they too are just pieces in a game they never agreed to play. In the cold quiet that followed, the weight of everything pressed down so hard you felt as if your lungs might give out, not from lack of air, but from the suffocating clarity that had settled like ash over your thoughts. This wasn't just a story about lost memories or shadowy conspiracies anymore. It was about something far more profound, something that stretched beyond the fractured walls of your mind, beyond the blurred faces in old photos or the whispered names that haunted your dreams. The mystery now was why. Why had this invisible force chosen you? Why had it woven itself into the fibers of your identity? And most importantly, what did it mean for what it truly meant to be human? You remember the moment it all came crashing down, The moment when the fragile hope that had kept you tethered shattered like glass against the cold, hard truth. The truth was not some external villain lurking beyond comprehension. No, it was inside you, inside all of you. It was the aching vulnerability that comes from being seen and unmade, the terrifying freedom that comes from facing the emptiness between the fragments of your soul. Marissa's voice trembled across the line, raw and broken. "I'm scared," she confessed, "not just because of what they did, but because maybe this is who we really are. Maybe the masks we wear, the memories we hold on to, they're just stories we tell ourselves to survive." Her words struck deeper than any conspiracy or shadowy figure ever could. Because what she said was true. The thing that haunted you wasn't just a manipulation of your mind. It was a mirror held up to your humanity, reflecting the fragile, fragmented nature of identity itself. You think about Harper's warning, the one about the battlefield of the psyche, the relentless shaping and reshaping of who you think you are. Maybe you realize the real terror isn't that someone or something controls you, but that control itself is an illusion, a desperate grasp for meaning in a chaos that refuses to be tamed. The real question isn't who you are, but what you will choose to become when the foundations of yourself crumble beneath you. And then comes the choice, the moment where the path splits, where every instinct screams to run back into the comforting darkness of denial, but a deeper voice urges you to step forward, to stare into the abyss and find something that feels like truth. It's a choice that feels impossible, to surrender to the unraveling and let the mystery consume you, or to fight for the shards of your identity, to rewrite the story with your own hand, even if the ending is uncertain. You feel the weight of that decision crush your chest as the memories, real, false, or somewhere in between, collide in a storm of pain and hope. In the quiet aftermath, you reach for Marissa's hand, or maybe it's just a shadow in the darkness, but it grounds you. "I don't know what's real anymore," you admit, voice barely a whisper. But maybe that's the point. Maybe being human is about holding on to the unknown, about finding light in the places where everything falls apart. Her eyes shine with tears, not from fear, but from a fierce kind of understanding. "You were right all along," she says softly. "This isn't just about control or memory. It's about what it means to be alive in a world that tries to erase us. We aren't broken, we're becoming." And in that moment, a terrifying, fragile awakening, you realize that the story doesn't end with answers. It ends with questions that echo into the silence, with truths too vast to grasp fully but too vital to ignore. As the screen fades, the last line hangs in the air, a whisper that lingers long after the video ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.